Agate, wake up, come on. It's Exodus morning. Come on, it only happens one time a year. Hurry up, get up. What's wrong?
Is it true?
Is what true?
What they did to our ancestors?
That happened. That's what we honor today. Exodus is important to our people. We have to be strong Apache women and honor our ancestors on this day, okay?
Okay, Mom. Thank you. Love you.
It'll never happen again. Nothing like that will ever happen again. Come on now, let's go.
Excuse me, sir. Is there a stagecoach coming in?
Good day, ma'am. There won't be a stagecoach leaving here until about next Tuesday. See, it ain't safe around here with all them Indians running around.
Thank you for stopping in. Today we have a special treat. We're going to make Indian fry bread, and it's a very, very wonderful Southwest bread. It's crispy on the outside, very soft on the inside.
A ruling issued February 3rd, 2009 in the Maricopa County Superior Court determined that the Arizona Department of Water Resources is not required to hear the Yavapai Apache Nation's objections about water supply, even though these people, the Yavapai Apache Nation's people, have been using this water supply for hundreds of years.
Now, General, in your book, The Seizing of America, you state that the American Indians were treated fairly?
Oh, of course they were. I mean, 50 cents an acre, that's more than reasonable.
Well, Exodus Day means to me liberation. Exodus for the Yavapai Apache people has always been an expression of freedom, to be able to come back from incarceration of 25 years on the San Carlos Indian Reservation in eastern Arizona.
Exodus Day to me means it's a time for our tribal members to reflect on the hardships that our ancestors faced many years ago when they were marched to San Carlos, and it's a commemoration of when the people came back to the Verde Valley, and they were prisoners down in San Carlos, and they came back to the Verde Valley, their home. And Exodus Day to me is a time for all our tribal members to reflect on that time and to commemorate and to show their appreciation for our ancestors that had to go through that march.
To me, when the story of Exodus is brought upon us, that gives me a clear picture of what was done to our people long ago. We know that they were taken captives and taken to San Carlos.
Well, Exodus is kind of like something that a lot of tribes have faced, unfortunately. There have been many, many tribes that have been relocated from their homelands and placed in what amounts to concentration camps. And I know that the word Exodus, some people use it to refer to leaving the homelands or being interred in what I call the concentration camp in San Carlos. But I see Exodus, to make it consistent with the biblical Exodus, as leaving San Carlos and coming back to the Promised Land, which is this homeland for the Yavapai and Apache people. And so I see it as they're exiting out of San Carlos and returning to the Promised Land.
We now think that Native Americans have inhabited North America for at least 22 to 25,000 years, and in Native terms that translates into forever. Tribal people came into a kind of equilibrium with the landscape and with other tribes, and essentially lived a life that was not without conflict or without problems, but that they were at ease with. The movement of the seasons, procurement of food, raising of the children, all had a set pattern that was uncompromised by other dominant cultures. Prior to the Federal Army showing up in the 1870s, life was essentially a task of procuring food for the children and to store for the winter so everybody could make it to the next spring so they could have more children and store more food. So food was gathered off of the landscape in a set pattern that had been going on for millennia. In the summer, they knew that the emery oak acorn was available from late July to early September, depending on the elevation. And it wasn't just a matter of food. Plant medicines were very important to tribal people then, as they are now. It was a very healthy diet. You know, you weren't looking at any tetracycline or refined sugar or not, trans fat and things like that. It was a very, very healthy diet. And tribal people before the forced commodity foods of, coffee, white flour, scrawny beef, and sugar, which is really kind of a long-term death sentence. Deer, bighorn sheep, smaller animals like rabbits, pack rats were utilized. There were prohibitions on some food, but it was a very healthy diet. Initially, it was, I think, just a perceived threat and an inconvenience for the people that lived within a mile or two of where the fort was established. There had been military incursions in the state prior to the Civil War, the 1850s through 1861, and then the government disappeared out of Arizona, especially central Arizona, for about 5 years. It was literally no notification. The people here had been led to believe if they came in and gave up their old mobile way of life, had been given by executive order signed in 1871 by Ulysses S. Grant. People were cordoned off from free movement, first regionally and then locally. Because of the success of the local tribal people in producing their own food with a surplus for the Army, the contractors known as the Tucson Ring forcefully lobbied, and without warning or reason or explanation, been told to pack their things and that they would be moving out in the next essentially day or two. There's nothing good that can be said about the entire event except that people lived to come back.
There is no history of a civilized race that they have murdered one another as the American soldiers had done to my people in the year 1872. They have slaughtered men, women, and children without mercy as being of the human race. I am the only living now to tell about what happened to my people. Humathaya, Yavapai, 1872.
Lots is missing in those books, 'cause there's hardly no Indians in there. You can't see hardly nothing in there about how we used to live.
Eva Talene Watt, Apache, 2004. The only good Indian is a dead Indian. General Philip Sheridan, 1869.
troubles you, my child? I'm scared. This really happened to our people?
Please don't worry. You're a strong Native American girl. We as Native American people have survived thousands of years. Gotta go!
Camp Verde should know also that our people have been through a lot. This was our land first, and we've allowed them to stay here, and they need to know more about the Indian people that they live with. I think that our schools should be getting more of a lesson on Exodus and its history of the lands, its history of Camp Verde, its history of the Verde Valley.
They took away their traditions, their culture from them, their language, and they still held on to what they had, and that is something that we think a lot about, is our land that was ours in the first place. It belonged to all the Indian people that were here in this continent, and I believe that they were strong enough and had the things that would help them to survive, for being a warrior, being strong in their heart, being even torn apart from other things. So we know that they've been strong, that they made it back over here, so that the future of the generation would be that we could help carry on the traditions, the culture. We have never given up.
There's a story about one man, a Yavapai man, who had a wife that was crippled, probably with a hip problem, genetic hip problem maybe, and he was an elderly man, and so he didn't want to leave her, and so he cut some holes in a burden basket, which is a basket. In those days they were quite large, because that's what they harvested, seeds and whatever. And he put her in the basket, and he carried her every day and cross the rivers. In the swollen rivers, there's about 5 rivers they had to cross before they got to San Carlos, and he carried her all the way on his back. They spent 25 years in San Carlos as prisoner of war. They couldn't leave the reservation. But things lightened up by 1900. And the draw of the homeland in Apache we call Shikeya. Shikeya means my homeland. It connotates a special place where God created. As he created the earth, there's special places that he put man. And this is the place that he put our people, as we call ourselves, the hunters. And so the draw of the homeland, just as it is to the Israelites today, they're still going home after 1948 when the country of Israel was made. So they headed home, and of course when they got home, the ranchers and other people had taken their land and start shoving them off and told them it's not their land. And then also the government grabbed up a whole bunch of land in 1905 under the United States Forest Service and kept the people off the land and said, you can't come on here and harvest your wild crops. And so our people had a very destitute time, being homeless, being chased off lands, and there were only particular places that they could congregate, and one of those places was the Verde Valley. In some of these places, they were still squatters on land until 1911, when the first parcel of land that a man by the name of Gabbro was able to buy from the Wingfields in Camp Verde, because he was the champion for our people, saying, look, these people signed a treaty in good faith, and yet they're landless, they're moving, they're not being taken care of, their children are not going to school because the local school won't let them come in because they're Indians. And so he was able to convince the War Department, which eventually became the Bureau of Indian Affairs, to buy 18 acres in Camp Verde, which was the beginning of a so-called new reservation, but it's still a reservation that was given back in 1871. And our people survived the best they could, and still living off the land and traveling and working in mines, being cowboys, and the smelters were able to survive, and we're descendants of those people today. People with a strong heart, a desire to live in the land that God gave them, to be free and to take care of this land, because as when God gave it to them, it was for them to take care of it, not to own it.
Picture in your mind a castle. The walls are made of sovereignty. High above those walls is the core of government, and their function is to monitor both sides of the wall. Within those walls is essence, centuries of culture, beliefs, truths, and a way of life that is often misunderstood. Even then, it is so beautiful by its very existence.
A little more flour, and then, oh gosh, bear with me folks, I'm not sure how they did this. How do they, Is something smoking?
Come on, Ashley, hurry up, let's go, we're gonna be late.